You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Alan Lee, how are you, pal?
How are you? We're all good.
Okay. So, how's quarantine, man?
You mean hydrochloroquine? I haven't taken it yet. I'm glad you asked. How's hydrochloroquine?
Yeah.
It's something I haven't gone to the Walgreens to get yet, and I'm glad I haven't had to take it. Why did you go over and drop a couple of these pills before the show?
No.
No, quarantine has been great. I'm just joking. I know you meant the word quarantine.
Sorry.
I love it.
I'm paying attention. I just texted Ryan my number.
Yeah.
Oh, he actually is in the waiting room. Okay. Sorry. Let's welcome our guest today on Reza Riffs. He's from Comedy Central. Great stand-up comedian. He has several specials out. I should probably name one. I know one is called How to Be an Audience Member.
Mm-hmm.
But I should probably name the other ones. How to Be... And then Man in the Suit. That's the one, Man in the Suit. The great Ryan Stout, and we're going to welcome him. You ready, Alan Lee?
I sure am.
All right, man. Boom. I think we got... Hey, Ryan. Oh, his audio's connecting.
He's all... Oh, look at
Here.
this.
Okay.
Hey, Ryan. How are you?
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay? Do you need some more volume, less volume? What do you need?
That's perfect, buddy.
Awesome. Let's do that then.
Yeah.
You look great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. You look great.
You don't look like you've been in quarantine at all.
I know. Like, I grow a beard now, man.
Yeah.
Everybody's growing hair in the quarantine.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any reason not to.
Ryan, weren't you starting
Boy, it looks like we're on his podcast. I love it.
Yeah, I'm in charge here.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Keith?
I said, weren't you starting to grow the beard before all this happened? Because I could have sworn last time I saw you at the Improv, you had a beard.
Yeah, it's possible. My wife prefers me to have a little facial hair. So I tend to grow it out for 3-4 days and then shave it, and then grow it out for 3-4 days and shave it. But it's one of those things that now we go about 5-6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are things on because I know you said that the reason why you couldn't do studio is because you're worried about your wife's health. How is that? Everything going okay there?
Yeah, totally good. It's just one of those things that, people who are immunocompromised have a little more at stake right now.
Yeah.
So, we've been aware of it for 6 months, and we just stay aware of it.
Is it hard for you, like when you because I'm assuming you're the one who's going out getting the groceries, you know what I mean?
Oddly enough, we just have everything delivered.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many services out there that even offer like free trials. Like Shipped is a service that Target uses, and like my wife signed up for a free like 6 weeks, and then when her free period was over, I signed up, and so we're now in the middle of another free 6 weeks.
And then after your trial, you have to make up someone and have them.
Yeah. Well, we just need new email addresses. That's all we really need. And those are free.
It's kind of like Zoom. Fucking the system, one email at a time.
Let's just keep doing it.
Oh, man. Ryan, Alan and I were actually debating this before we saw that you were in. It says you were born in Ohio, but you grew up in Texas.
Yeah.
So are you a Texan or are you a Ohioan?
That's a good question. I mean, most people who meet me say, you don't seem like you're from Texas.
Right.
And I tell them, well, yeah, because most of the things you learn in your life are pretty much before the age of 4. So all of the people that I heard speaking, all of the kind of mannerisms that I picked up in my early childhood, those were all Ohio people. And then I moved to Texas, and I moved to El Paso, Texas. So that's not even that's not like Dallas, you know, it's not that heart of Texas type area. And oddly enough, I meet people from New Mexico, and I kind of vibe with them more than I vibe with people from Texas, because there's just something about growing up in the middle of that harsh desert that you just go, hey, we're on the same page here somehow.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Texas, but I consider myself a Californian because I've been here my entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's anytime somebody asks me where I'm from, I always just go, what do you want to know? What are you asking me? Because I started doing stand-up in San Francisco. I live in LA now. I was born in Ohio. My career took off when I won the Boston Comedy Festival. So people think I'm a Boston person. And I was like, I was there for a week. I was there for 1 week.
That was a question I had because you won the Boston Festival. When you signed up for that and they said, hey, you're in, did you think maybe you weren't going to get in and you just signed up just to get spots or whatever? Like, what was your...
You know, I had to audition to get in. So they had live auditions in the Bay Area at a local comedy club. And I went and I auditioned, and it was probably wasn't the greatest audition I've had. There were tables full of people who were just interrupting the show a lot, doing a lot of heckling, doing a lot of just being rude. And a lot of the comics that got on stage actually addressed those people yelling out. And I got on stage and I was like, I'm just going to do my act. I'm just going to plow through and pretend they're not even here. And the guy who was booking the festival really enjoyed that and my ability to persevere. And so I think that actually kind of helped me get in. But, you know, when I flew out to Boston and slept on the floor in my friend's attic, you know, it's kind of expensive to fly across the country when you're a comic with no money. Right. And it's a competition for $10,000, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to get eliminated round one. Right. So the longer it dragged out, the more happy I was just to be there. And then when I ended up winning, I remember my reaction was, oh, like, this is so odd.
Yeah.
Really? I won this thing? And once I won and they handed me a check and I flew back to San Francisco, my life really kind of changed a lot. I started getting a lot of phone calls and things.
Oh, that's awesome. I've never won a comedy competition that I've done. I came in second one in the LA's Funniest, and I lost by 19 points. And the guy who ran it, he's like, you lost by 19. I was like, is that good?
Yeah. Is that a lot of points? Is that only a few points?
I know, because come basketball, 19's terrible. You know what I mean?
Or yeah.
The comedy contest, who the fuck knows?
Right. Could be anything. I came in second in a lot of contests before I actually won one. And then the one I won, I was like, all right, no more contests. I'm not doing any more. I'm retired.
I think that's what I will get to, because it's like, you know what? I think I'm good enough to win even the shittiest ones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and there's also this added level. Once you win a comedy contest, then if you compete in another one and you don't win, the people who run that contest are like, yeah, the guy who won Boston couldn't even win ours. Ours is harder. Ours is better. You know, there's this convoluted marketing that kind of happens.
It's like, you must have had a good night in Boston.
Yeah. That contest must be easy if you won.
It sounds like the World Series of Comedy. Did you ever do that one?
I never did it. I think it started up a little after my big win.
Oh man, I gotta tell you, I made the finals on that, and the guy who runs it, he said that there's 10,000s of comics who do it. I don't know if that's true, but in the finals there's 100, and I lost the opening night.
Wow.
I was just like, geez, man, it was tough.
Yeah, I think anytime you increase the number of competitors, your chances of getting through just plummet.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why none of us have a career in stand-up comedy, really, because there are 1.5 billion comedians all fighting for stage time, and it's like, why would I pay you to get on stage when I can have 19 people get up for free? we're all fighting for the same limited resources.
Yeah. What's it like? Because what's it like when you do comedy at a club and stuff, and you see a comic who not necessarily has the same style as you or the same, but like, you know how like it's not the same, but like you can tell there's influences there. You know what I mean? Like, how does that throw you off, or do you just do your thing?
I think I always watch the acts in front of me just to be aware of what they're doing and what the vibe is. And it's been somewhat rare that somebody's on stage where I'm like, oh, we are way too similar. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
At the very least, if they get the crowd going, I get to go, oh, good. There's going to be more of this then.
Right.
But yeah, the only thing that ever really threw me off was I was working with this guy, and I always wear a suit and tie on stage, just out of habit and out of not really understanding fashion and thinking, oh, this will be an easy thing that I can wear forever and ever and ever. But I worked with this guy on a Thursday, and he's just wearing like jeans and like a button up. And then Friday, he's just kind of, casual as well. And then Saturday, I walk into the club, he's wearing a full suit and tie. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why? No. And I made him go home and change. I literally was like, no. You're going to wear what you enjoy wearing. There's no copying me. I get to walk on being dressed. You knew I was going to dress like this. I didn't know you were going to dress like that.
Oh my God. Oh dude. But no, like I totally get it, because when I opened up for Norm, I was with Norm for 4 or 5 years, but as the longer I was with him, the more similar I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
That's hard to avoid.
yeah.
It's hard to avoid being influenced. And I remember starting off and knowing comics who they literally didn't want to watch anybody else because they didn't want to be influenced. Whereas I was more of the opinion of, oh, I want to watch everybody else because I just want to see what they're doing. And, if I watch enough people, then hopefully it won't just be one influence on me. And I came up in San Francisco with a good group of people who were incredibly diverse in style and approach, because I was with Moshe Kasher and Brent Weinbach and Guy Branum and Ali Wong. And, there were a number of us coming up that were all so excessively different. Louis Katz would get on stage. He'd be, he'd tell filthy stories, and then Brent would get up and he'd be very abstract and doing physical things, and Moshe would be riffing. And it really made you wonder, like when Guy Branum is doing some bit about pop culture, I'm sitting there in the audience going, wow, I don't really talk about pop culture, but if I did, what would I say? And so it really stretches your brain to be like, well, if I were to do something abstract and weird and physical like Brent is doing, what would I do? So it's just like a taffy pull for talent. And you're just being somewhat influenced by everybody without being, without necessarily like copying them.
Well, who influenced you about the suit? Because I know that's always been your style.
Yeah.
But in the 80s and the 90s, like Bobby Slayton wears a suit, and I remember my first year when I was with Norm, he actually did wear a suit.
Yeah.
So like, who influenced you on that? Like what when you said, hey, when I do stand-up comedy, I want to wear a suit, like,
I did my first like 2-3 years, I just kind of wore whatever I wore on stage, but I didn't start wearing the suit until I started in 2001. In 2004, I started wearing the suit just because I kind of wanted to tell the audience what to expect. They watch you walk up the stairs and get on the stage, and they have an expectation before you ever say any words into the microphone. So I wanted to kind of set the expectation that I'm going to be standing and talking. You're not going to see me do cartwheels. I'm not going to be juggling. We're not going to be doing anything. I'm going to stand and talk. Yeah. And I think the people who really kind of influenced that were people like Greg Proops. Certainly, I always thought he controlled the stage and looked great. And it was almost like Proops was highbrow and being respectful to the audience. Like, hey, we're having a show here, everybody.
Yeah.
I always liked that David Feldman would wear a suit. I really enjoyed that Slayton was one of the first people I worked with. and he dressed up, but especially Robert Schimmel. Robert Schimmel was so filthy,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yet he'd be so dressed up that it would be there was almost something charming about it.
When his death happened, that was the first comic that really hit me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like everyone says they love Richard Pryor and all that stuff, and that's fine. But let's be honest, that's not my type of humor. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Robert was like one of those, like, whoa, like this is the guy I watch a lot. You know?
Sure. Yeah. And Robert, I remember the first time I saw Robert, he was being interviewed on The Daily Show by Jon Stewart, and John was asking him about his new album. And I had watched so much stand-up comedy up to that point and hadn't really run into Robert because, he was pretty filthy. So he wasn't going to get on a lot of late night talk shows. And I remember just watching him being interviewed, and he was hilarious. And I ran out that afternoon and bought his new album and just fell in love with it. And, I remember when he passed away as well, because I was in Australia doing shows at the Comedy Store in Sydney, and I heard about it. And my manager actually repped Robert Schimmel for a long, long time.
Oh.
So then I reached out just to see, if he was doing okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Robert was really fantastic. And I still just love his work, to this day.
Now, I know you have a manager. I don't know if it's the same manager you're talking about, but I know it's like a big manager, and I don't want to say, but how old were you when you got your first manager in comedy? Because I think a lot of comedians think, oh, I have a manager, I'm going to make it, when that's not necessarily true. You know what I mean?
No, it's almost never true.
Right.
So I won the Boston Comedy Festival. It was September of 2005, and I was 22. And then 22 years old. And then I turned 23 within like a couple of weeks. And then I'd say 4 or 5 weeks after that, my phone is ringing and I'm dealing with various managers and setting up meetings with ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. And I'm like a college kid at this point.
Right.
And so, it was probably about 6 to 8 weeks after I won that comedy contest. So I was 23 years old, and I'm 37 now.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
That's pretty young for a comic to have a manager, wouldn't you think? Like 23?
Yeah, it is. But I always think of things in stand-up comedy terms as well, because I had already been doing stand-up really consistently for about 4 years at that point.
Okay.
So it's interesting when you meet somebody and they say, oh, I've been doing comedy for 5 years, and you watch them on stage and you go, have you? And it's because they spent 5 years doing like a show a month.
Yeah.
They get on stage once every, 35 days, and you go, yeah, it's not really enough. I was getting on stage 300 plus times per year. So by the time I got a manager, I had a few thousand shows under my belt.
Now, it's interesting that you say that, because you do you think, like, because I'll be honest with you, I consider myself a stand-up comic. If I put all the years I've been doing it for 16 years. I would say 9 years, probably like you, every single night, 3 shows, open mic. And then I'd also be like, there's years where one show every 35 days. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, and I haven't been on stage since March,
Yeah,
thanks to COVID-19. I am not one of these people that believes that once you start, you have to maintain that intensity throughout your whole career, or it doesn't count.
Right.
All the shows count.
Yeah.
So I look at somebody and I go, great, you've been doing it for 5 years and you've done 125 shows. Okay. You're at 125 shows. That's where you are. I'm not counting years. I'm not really counting anything, because you could just tell somebody's skill level by how much they've practiced. And I think as well as I do that after a certain amount of time, the learning curve really starts to kind of level off. You're not going to learn as much by going to an open mic today as you would have 16 years ago.
And see, that was another question. Like, it's fascinating that you actually just said that, because I was thinking about this. I was like, you know what? This could be a great question for Ryan Stout, where, you're right. There's a point at open mics where you stop learning. There's a point where going to shows where you just stop learning. But then you go podcasting, like listening to podcasts, I think, is a totally different book. Like it could give you like, holy shit, I didn't even know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's what I wanted to think about you. Like, do you think like podcasting is really helping that learning tool?
It might. I think of podcasting as kind of a different beast altogether, just because you know, when you're on stage and you're talking for an hour, nobody else really gets to chime in. um, I think that no matter what you do, you could always learn something at an open mic, but you really have to be specific about what goals you set for yourself. You have to say, look, I'm going to try this joke and this joke and this joke, and I'm really focused on these, and I'm focused on, you know, getting the words out correctly. I'm focused on doing these pieces. But in the beginning, when you're brand new to stand up, you're on stage just like treading water. You're learning to breathe. You're learning to where to look. You're learning to how to move the mic stand out of the way. You're learning so many things all at the same time. And you're learning that without setting any goals. You're just learning it naturally. Versus once you know what you're doing, you really have to select your practice. You know, I think the best example is Tom Brady as a quarterback. He can certainly go in the backyard and throw the football with his kids, but is he going to learn anything? Probably not. Probably not. It's not the same as running drills.
That's very interesting. Part of me agrees, but part of me also like slightly wants to differ because you mentioned Tom Brady. I think, hey, not everyone's going to be a Tom Brady. Like, if I'm being honest, I think I'm a Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I do good sometimes, and the rest I'm gonna just do bad. But I gotta live with it, you know.
Sure. And I would say that's true. And when Ryan Fitzpatrick goes in his backyard and plays with his kids, he's probably not learning anything by playing with his kids. You know, it's just casual throwing the ball around. So, you know, if he were to run drills, he would learn.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the stand-up culture that gets lost sometimes is you're trying to make it fun and you're trying to make it enjoyable for yourself and for everybody else. And you can get caught up into this idea that, oh no, I'm actually supposed to be working on things right now. I'm supposed to be developing new material. I'm supposed to be honing certain skills. And you know, a lot of guys are getting on stage just drunk, having a good time. And then after 6-7 years, they want to know why their career hasn't picked up. And you go, oh, well, it's okay to be drunk. There are a lot of great artists that develop drunk. Right. You got drunk and just forgot to develop material.
Have you ever seen comics like that because sometimes, you know, I don't want to say names, but the guys who I've opened for, you know, because it's private but they've probably done drugs or drink to make themselves as they got older, but then like it kind of made them worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for them, but like, have you ever seen like something like that for when you started? Like, oh my God, this guy's the best. And then you see him now, you're like, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, I you know, Seinfeld said it's so hard to get through this business because every single human frailty can chop away at your success. Right. And, you know, we know a lot of people who, and not just comics, we know a lot of people who have depression, they have anxiety, they use drugs or alcohol to deal with that. They have personality disorders that have gone undiagnosed and only gotten worse. They have, you know, just regular human problems can, you either get it under control and use it to your advantage, or you don't pay attention to it and you just let things spin out of control. And the longer you're in comedy not making progress, you start to kind of devolve a little bit.
Yeah. And you're a pretty young dude. Like, I think you're maybe 37, 38.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm 33. So I don't know. I just look at you and I think, oh my God, this is awesome because you've always been one of my favorite comics. And
thanks, man.
So nice. And like, I don't know. I'll be honest. I've had those days where maybe I've overtaken my Xanax. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't want you to think of me like that. You know what I mean?
Look, and by the way, everybody makes errors.
Yeah.
I certainly made errors. I think probably around 2014, 2015, I was getting off stage. Pretty much every time I would get off stage, I would say, all right, we're done. Let's reward ourselves with some booze. And then I would go to the bar and drink and hang out and have a good time. And I told myself that because I wasn't drinking before the show, I was doing great.
Right.
I was pointing to people who were other comics who were getting plastered before they get on stage. And I'm like, look at that guy, really throwing it away. But then after my set, I would go to the bar and get drunk. And it took some time to realize like, oh, maybe that's not the best method for me.
Right.
And it's not even about what anybody else does. It's just about me and what I do. Like when you say that you might have overtaken your Xanax a few times, just by the way that you worded it, I'm like, oh, but you're aware.
Yeah.
You're trying to gauge like what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And that's all we can do.
Yeah. And when I say may, I think I'm leaning towards probably did. You know what I mean? But, you know, because I have Asperger's and then like I also have anxiety. And I realized that it's worse the late show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally possible.
Yeah. First show, I'm always on fire. Late show, I'm usually Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know what I mean?
Oh, good. Yeah. I think most of us are. It's a tough struggle, that late show.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a situation. You're dealing with anxiety is very different from, you know, anything that I deal with. So I would never put any judgment on you for how you try to navigate that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's one of the best things I think about stand-up comedy is understanding that everybody who does it is an individual and they're all trying their damnedest to figure this out the best way they can. And everybody makes different choices, and some people make great choices. Some people make bad choices. Some people make great choices for them that would be a horrible choice for me. And you just go, hey, if you can get on stage and tell the jokes, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember like 5 or 6 years ago when the improvs were they were trying the 3 shows a night on the weekends, the 7 o'clock, the 9 o'clock, and the 11 o'clock?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
did you ever do one of those weekends? Was that like, holy Lord?
I remember there was a while there where the improv would like me. They enjoyed me going up last on the very last show. They really liked that. And they kind of spun it as a compliment. They're like, we just know that you can really get up there and give the energy and like, and put a nice bow on the show and like let everybody leave happy. And I was like, okay, that's very nice of you. While I get up at 1:35 in the morning, checks are being dropped. There are 14 people left. And while it's a compliment, I'm like, oh, thank you. But now you've made my life difficult.
Uh-huh.
Alan, did you have a question for Ryan?
Oh, no, I grew up in Texas as well, and I agree completely with how he said, you don't sound like you're from Texas if you have even a small background in another city. I was born in New York City.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And my parents are immigrants. My mother's Cuban and my father's Chinese. And so I didn't have, all I had was a television to get my accent.
Right. Right.
And I had this television accent, and I didn't even embrace a Texas accent, you know, and I thought that was sort of funny. I went to parochial school, Catholic school. And it's just how we all evolve. And even as artists, as comedians, you know, it's part of our art is actually where we came from and how we dealt with it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on the TV idea as well, because I remember being, especially growing up in El Paso, Texas, there's not a lot around. Like you can't even be really a sports fan and go see like a live game. Like if you wanted to go see football, you'd have to go to Denver or Phoenix or Dallas. Same for baseball. So it was a lot, and there's not a lot coming through town as far as art or bands or things like that. So you end up watching a lot of television and trying to, I don't know, connect to the world that way. And I often wonder, like growing up in the 1980s, seeing so much stand up on television, what an influence that was. Like had I grown up a different time with less stand-up on TV, would I have been as excited by it?
That's interesting.
Ryan, I have a question. I know you've done some. They just said Zoom meeting will end in 10 minutes. I don't know what that means, but I think it means it ends in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think they're going to kick us off. We're not premium members.
Oh yeah, you're fucking the system one email at a time, man. So my question was this: I know you've done game shows, and I know you've done like prank shows like Famous, but how come there hasn't been a Ryan Stout pilot? Because your humor would be perfect for one.
I think that's a good question. I think the answer that I've heard most to that question is too many white guys.
Really?
That's the answer that I've gotten most when we've tried to take shows out, which is, hey, we think it's really great, we think it's really funny, but we just have a lot of white guys right now. And so, that's just a certain element of how the business works. You have to work within the parameters of society as it is, and that's where society's been for the past I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah. So
is there any plans that you have, like, because I'm sure when you write like something really good that you believe in, is there any plans that you will produce it yourself and film it?
That is a possibility. My buddy Dave and I recently wrote a pilot together, and we've been kind of pitching it around. Of course, we got it written earlier this year, and then the pandemic came along, so it's been a lot of virtual type meeting on that. Yeah. But there's never any reason to think that anything's gonna like take off and bump you up to the next level, but there's no reason to think that nothing will either. So I always think, just keep creating stuff, get it made however you can. If you're really passionate about it, it's fine. One thing I love about stand-up comics is we are so dedicated to the idea of, I have this thought, I'm going to go put it on stage. I'm going to put it out in the world. So, it's interesting. We have a lot of people in our community that get stuff made, and so it'll get made. Stuff will get made.
Well, definitely let me know, because I want to help. Like, if you do a GoFundMe or something, I'll help promote it, and I'll pitch in. Because
thanks, man.
Yeah, because like I said, you're one of my favorites, and you've always been nice to me. I know we've only met like 4 or 5 times, but like a lot of comics, especially, they don't really want to put the time into being nice to other comics who can't help them. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that kind of comes out of what I was talking about earlier with all of the competition. There's so much competition for stage time that you almost want to deter people from pursuing comedy. But I never thought that way. I always thought that anybody who wants to try, they can come and they can compete for stage time, and that's just, we're all in the same competition together. But I'm also just kind of a nice person, I'm told.
That's good.
I do remember, like, very early on in my career, there was a kid, he was about my age, and he was going to Berkeley, and he pulled me aside at the Punchline in San Francisco, and he was like, hey, Ryan, can I ask you a few questions? Because I'm really new, and you've been around for a few years, and I'm just kind of curious, like, how all this works. And I talked to that guy for about 3 hours, and then I never saw him again.
Wow.
So either I did a really good job of telling him, like, this is what you need to commit to, and this is what you're getting into, and I like scared him away, or I made him consider, like, do I really have the commitment to give my time to this? But I also wonder, did I help him, or did I just waste my time?
But during the moment, did you feel that was a good conversation?
I felt like that was worth doing in the moment, and reflecting back, I probably saved that guy a lot of years.
Yeah.
I might have wasted a couple of hours of my life, but I saved him a lot of years.
And hey, who knows? He might have become a YouTube star and now is getting gigs off that.
Yeah, anything could happen. He just needed to learn that stand-up wasn't for him.
Now, Ryan, this is actually a question that I'm dealing with as a comic, and I wanted to see how you feel, because I'm sure as much as everyone loves their own work, I'm sure you can agree to a point. I have, not to brag, I have a 30-minute special and I have a 1-hour special. The 1-hour special is also a 30-minute special, so technically I have a 1-hour special.
Okay.
I'm very, very proud of the 1-hour special, but when I filmed my 30-minute special, I thought, this is the biggest piece of shit in the world.
You thought it at the time, or when you saw it later, or
I thought
looking back?
I thought at the time, and I thought when I saw, like, I thought basically I wasn't ready for a 30-minute special. I feel 6 years later, it's an hour special, and the jokes are more polished, and it's now an hour. I'm 100% proud of it. Like, I love my special. I will fight for my special.
Yeah.
What are, like, I'm sure one of your specials, there's some, you know what I mean?
I was fortunate in that somebody told me very early on that you're going to end up hating everything you do. So I look back at like my first album, and there's some stuff on there that I'm still kind of proud of, and there's stuff on there that I cringe at. There's stuff on my second album that I cringe at. There's stuff on the latest album that I cringe at. And it's just one of those things that comes with creativity, I think. I went to school for creative writing, and I got to talk to a lot of like authors and poets, and they kind of feel the same way about their early work, that they don't feel the same way about it now. And even Eddie Murphy was talking about how he watches some of his stuff from the 80s when he was a superstar, but now in today's climate and today's, just the way humor's evolved, Eddie kind of goes, yeah, I don't feel great about that early stuff. But that's okay.
Yeah, I also feel that's like a move for him to say that. You know what I mean?
Sure, he's kind of being. I honestly think what Eddie should say is like, yeah, most jokes don't withstand the test of time. Yeah. What I created in the 80s was beloved in the 80s, and that's just the way it is. Exactly. And now we move on. Like, it's nobody's fault. Yeah. It's not the audience's fault for laughing. It's not my fault for making the audience laugh. That's just, it's on record. That's what that time period was. Yeah. So yeah, everything that I create, I know that I'll eventually probably find faults with it. And then you just have to know that nothing's going to be perfect. And you just, it's so much better than doing the opposite, which is don't create anything. I'm not going to create anything because I know I'm going to hate it later. So I won't do anything.
And see, I want you to take that on advice when you film your pilot. Create it, man. Just create it. Because I believe in your stand-up and I believe in your humor. And I would love to see it.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. I appreciate that support. Yeah. I will remember that.
All right. Where can the folks at home follow you? And we only have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I mean, I've got 4 minutes worth of plugs, so let's make it fast. I'm on Instagram, of course, at Stout Cider, STOUTSIDER. And I'm on Twitter at Stout Ryan. I'm on Facebook /Ryan Stout, YouTube /Ryan Stout. Go to RyanStout.com and then find all the links there. And by the way, anybody who's listening to this, please find my stuff on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon, like anywhere that you listen to audio. You could find my first 3 albums, Touche, How to Be an Audience, and Man in the Suit.
We want people to buy it, though.
We would like people to buy it, but I would appreciate them listening on Pandora or Spotify and just giving me those clicks.
Ryan, I hate to be rude. It's going to sign me off, but I love you and thank you so much for doing it.
Dude, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee right here on LA Talk Radio.